can't remember if this is our second or third one on the fruit of peace. Oh yeah, it's the second one on video because we didn't get the first one in there. So it's the fruit of peace part 2. And we're basing it on the verse in Psalm 34, verse 14, which says, starting verse 14 says, "Depart from evil and do good and seek peace and pursue it." As we say, Peter quotes this in the New Testament and says, "ensue it," but it's basically both words mean the same thing, and we're basing on the fruits of the Spirit listed in Galatians 5. And so one thing that we've noticed that's evolved over the years is that people are more and more focused on the world and what everyone else is doing, okay? So when you think of this in connection to peace, okay, we have like this, in the new woke culture where everyone's afraid of offending people, you got to ask yourself, does the fear of offending everyone create peace? And we're thinking in terms of peace, does it actually create happiness and liberty too? But we'll always focus on peace, because that's what we're studying. This is our midweek Wednesday study in Franklin, New Hampshire. We were somewhat hoping to get some YouTube followers, which is why one of the main reasons that we're recording. I guess we have a few. Nobody's done any comments yet. It'd be nice to hear from any of you that listen, but I'm guessing of the 26, we're probably 3 or 4. There could be 15, 20 people that watch this, or maybe they just see it and scroll right through and don't see it. I don't know. But years ago, we did the fruit of love, we did the fruit of joy, and now we're starting the fear of, or now we're doing the fruit of peace. I do think there's a certain percentage of people that think that the more ways that they can figure out that people are offended, the smarter and deeper they are. Okay, so we shall start with the youngest in the room. Benjamin, does the fear of offending everybody create peace? Does wokeness the ideal means for peace?
No, it creates a lot of stress if you're constantly trying not to upset or offend anyone, and then like every different group is offended by something different, so like you can't do anything for yourself if you're gonna not offend anyone.
Yes, well, could I say that if you're not offensive, you shouldn't have to worry about it?
Yeah. Yes.
No. Well, no, that would defeat the point, because if that was true, then the fear of offending everybody would create peace, right? No, the thing is, you can't actually be not offensive at all,
Offend somebody.
because if someone wants to be offended, they can find something to be offended by. Okay, Lily.
I said no, there's no fear that creates peace. And there's a difference between being kind out of fear and being kind out of love.
That's a very good answer. I mean, the first one could apply to a lot of the questions that we asked, but yeah, if you're doing something out of fear, even if you're doing the right thing, it doesn't create peace. Yeah, but very good observation. Okay, Richard.
I said, so if you have to fear being thought of as hateful when you're not, it puts you on edge.
Yes, well, I think that just to state, okay, my opinion on this one, I think, is relatively obvious. Okay, is that we're creating a culture of walking on eggshells, and we're basically perpetuating that, because what happens is when one group, whether it be blacks or gays or some other minority, feels discriminated against, and then they complain about it, and then people like them for it, then another group finds something to be offended at, then another group finds something to be offended at, then another group, then you get to the point where you don't have any liberty, and then people aren't really trying to discern the difference between love and hate. They're basically trying to hate everybody that's saying what they find offensive. And I know this is not a politically correct statement, but I think this fear of offending everybody and this wokeness is what led to the things that those people hate. This is why we have a Donald Trump, for whatever it's worth, is because it was an overreaction to the wokeness, which was an overreaction to discrimination and other things. I mean, like I'm saying, when I'm saying this is wrong, remember, I'm not saying that it's 100% wrong. Like there are people that were unjustly,
Bigots and racist.
but the idea that if you are joking with somebody is offensive is not that's gone way too far.
Right.
Or the idea that if you well, basically, I think most of the jokes are okay, and as long as they're not dirty jokes or have some bad words in them. And I think that as people, we should be able to express adjectives without the idea that we're being judged as a bad person if there's something that someone else doesn't like. And I think that the culture of always being offended has made everybody walk on eggshells. Then the whole process of walking on eggshells, so that if you are politically correct and if you are woke and you feel that you're a champion of not being offensive, that still doesn't give you peace. The idea of being perfectly woke, you think, okay, that will create peace, but in reality, it causes you to walk on eggshells. Even if you're an expert on it, you still have this fear that everybody else is going to be offended. And so long as you're always worried about everybody being offended, then you can't have peace. You need what Paul calls liberty in order to have peace. Okay, so does isolating everybody, yourself from everybody that you see as different, create peace? Because if you're worried about like the different people that you think are too old, or people that you think are politically against what you believe, or people that you think are bad, does just basically ignoring all the people that you think are bad or different, does that create peace if you can actually live your life where you never have to see them? Okay, so Benjamin, does isolating yourself from everybody that you see as different create peace?
No, you'll have constant anxiety from trying to avoid everyone that's different from you, and then like you'll also get anxiety when you avoid or reject good people.
I think that's true, and I'd like to expound on that, but I'm going to wait till I give my answer. I mean, I think that's the blueprint, but it needs more explanation. Emma. I mean Lily.
Other girl.
I can't hear Emma.
Yeah. I said, no, there's no two people that are exactly the same, so if you cut out everyone who's different, you cut out the whole world.
Okay, that's true philosophically, but I didn't mean the question in that literal way. You're grammatically correct, but the principle still works though, because the point, I guess, okay, you could take the point and apply it. You could say, okay, she's saying no two people are alike. Then if you expound on that, which I think is probably what you meant, is that we should try to love everybody.
Yeah, you're not going to succeed at avoiding everybody.
Right. And yeah, so it took me a second to catch up to the thought, but yeah, that's a good point. Richard.
And so isolation typically is based on negativity, believing that the interaction will create some problem. Negative thoughts create anxiety, not peace. Peace comes from embracing truth, not from avoiding different views.
Yeah, if you are actually in a war zone, then a real war zone like in Ukraine, then isolating will give you peace, okay? But I think that if you're in a rich place that's full of wokeness and the opposite of wokeness, the mega woke or whatever, then trying to, if you say, okay, if you live your life, you're saying, this is who I like and this is who I don't like, and then I'm going to avoid all these annoying people that I don't like. Well, this doesn't work for several reasons. Number one is that some of the people that you may label negatively, that you think are bad or dangerous or whatever, some of them you're probably wrong. Because remember, we're not God. We know that as mortal human beings, we don't save anybody, right? We also don't have the power to read someone's heart perfectly. Okay? So we might have good discernment and be right 99% of the time, but we can't be right 100% of the time. The other thing is that once you start isolating yourself from everybody that you think is different or bad, then what you're doing is you're also you're casting judgment on all those people. So then when you see somebody that's similar, you then cast judgment on them before you get to know. I don't know if other people in this room have had this experience, but I was just mentioning Ukraine. This happened to me in Ukraine. It's happened to me in Texas, and it's happened to me in California. Have you ever gone to a faraway town and seen a bunch of people that look like people you knew before?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we ran into a guy in Florida, and I said to these guys, he was the maintenance guy at the hotel, and I said, who is he? And they said, Mr. Al. He was the exact same personality. He even, like, captured squirrels like Mr. Al does.
But the thing is, though, right, is he's probably not 100% exactly like Mr. Al. So
Right.
the point is, say you don't like Mr. Al,
Okay.
and then you say, all right,
He's like Mr. Al.
he's like Mr. Al, so I don't like him either.
Yeah,
What if he's a good person and this one isn't?
right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you make yourself God without realizing it when you shut other people out, but then your conscience, if someone's good to you that you've shut out, you get anxiety by rejecting the good.
Yeah.
You get anxiety by placing the judgment that the people are bad. If you think everybody that's different than you politically is bad, you get anxiety when one of them happens to be good. If you think that everybody well, actually we're going to get to that question later. If you think everybody that's of a different political persuasion, of a different educational persuasion, of a different income persuasion, Like there even are people that are snobs. There are like people. One thing that's created this division of people that are different is that we've learned that sometimes like who you hang out with affects a lot in your life. And so like if your friends are thin, you become thin. If your friends are rich, you become richer. And the good in that is that there's truth to it and you can learn from these people. But the bad is that this doesn't mean that people that are different are all bad. So if you then justify yourself and say, okay, here in our group we're all rich. Well, this doesn't mean that poor people are bad. You know, or you know, like I've even seen drug addicts do heroic, wonderful things. Okay, so people that might have an addiction can be a good person. Okay, people that have a you know that might not be smart with their finances doesn't mean they're bad in all areas. And so I think that one thing we're doing in culture too. There's a couple of different ways that people are separating themselves from something. People are different. Some is just blatant fear. There's a lot of the younger people will get on TikTok, see a video of people that people say are annoying or a song they think is annoying. Then they say, I don't like anyone that reminds me of this, right? Then there's another where there's the self-righteous group of people of varying ages who say, I am a successful person, so I'm only going to talk to other successful people. Well, then you say that, then that means that people that aren't successful are bad. Or you can see the opposite. You can see bad people say, I hate rich people. So once you label a group, the thing is that you're not perfect and neither are they. So when you limit something to your own understanding, when things go beyond your own understanding in terms of reality, that creates a lot of stress. Whereas if you looked at things from God's perspective and you said, our purpose as human beings is to redeem all mankind, then it alleviates all the stress. You look for the good in whoever you see, and then you try to inspire them to be a Christian, and then you see all people as equal, and we look at their strengths as a gift of God, and we look at their weaknesses as either we're wrong on what their weaknesses are, or we look at it as an unfortunate result of sin. So then we look at righteousness to be the solution to the problem, and inspiration to be what unifies the world, and then that's what creates peace. But the idea that we label everyone as different, as bad, is destructive to mankind. And aside from that, destructive to mankind, in relevance to the topic of the evening in terms of peace, you can't have any peace doing that. And for those of you watching the video, yes, I am strongly implying that I think this is what people are doing today. Do you think I'm...
Oh yeah, no, this is the biggest problem that we have as a culture.
Right. It's separating from people
that are different than you.
Right.
Yep.
So the next question, if you have all of the money and success in the world where you do not need anybody for anything, does that give you peace? You don't have to worry about workers, you don't have to worry about paying the bills, you don't have to rely on your friend to give you a job, you don't need a boss. Well, is that the key to peace? I do think deep inside, a lot of people seek wealth because they think it's going to give them peace.
Yeah.
And there is a certain type of peace that it does give. Put it in her mouth, shot. Okay. Well, we'll start with Richard first.
Okay, so I said you can have all those things, but you still need emotional support to have peace. You need to have someone in this world who loves you and someone to give your love to. Because we are emotional creatures, you can't have peace without that.
Okay, that's true. That's true. Benjamin?
No, money can get rid of some of your stress, but there's always something to worry about. A lot of people chase money for like the status. If you do that, you'll be constantly worried about losing your status, or your money, or your popularity. If you can't have peace where you're at, you'll never have peace.
Okay, that one answer almost piggybacks on what I was going to say. So when I speak, it's going to sound very similar. Lily.
I was just saying, no, just because your physical needs are met doesn't mean your mental and emotional needs are met.
Yes. Okay. Yes. That's a very good point. Okay, so I'm going to make a couple of points with this. Right. There is a worldly peace that comes from financial success. Like you don't have to worry about food, paying the bills, or getting stuff done. But that's not to be confused with the fruit of peace that's internal. Mm-hmm. So even though the only part that they overlink is if you're like totally poor or a slave and you have to work 16 hours a day, that's where, it would be, maybe better to have some money, right? But, but the worldly peace, the spiritual peace that comes from contentment and love is different than the financial. Now, then the points that Ben was making is that depending on the money that you have, like say you are retired and you have money in the stock market. Well, right at this moment, it looks like we're going to recession, and oftentimes recession is a 20% correction. So you might get a little stressed out, say if you got $1 million, to realize you might lose $200,000 this year. And if you sell it and you're wrong, that could cost you $200,000 on the other, either way. Or if you, or basically you have all this money. Imagine if you're Tom Cruise. Is anyone going to like you for you? People are going to be wondering, can you help me get in this movie? How much money do you have? Blah, blah, blah. So when you have all the money in the world, what happens is people really start using you, and then that creates a degree of anxiety. Then the other factor is that you have more responsibility, and we find in human nature you tend to do less. Like, you see poor people tend to be more generous than rich people, and some of the and it's like if you're rich, you got more of a responsibility. Like say for instance, Ben here is starving, and I'm starving, but I just ate, right? If I have no money in my pocket, I have no responsibility to Ben. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if everybody here is starving and I'm rich, then if I'm going to love my neighbors myself,
You got to give it away.
I got to give right. And so the more money, so what happens if I then don't do that, I get anxiety. So when you have more money, there's more things that you're responsible for. And if you're not vigilant about them, they create anxiety. Whereas if I don't have $1 in my pocket and I can't give you food, I might have empathy for you, have compassion, but I'm not getting anxiety that I didn't give it because I don't have any means to give it. I might have anxiety that you're hungry, and so therefore having all of your needs met, there is a point where that actually can become selfish, because if you love your neighbor as yourself, you might take a little less to help other people. And then when you don't do that, so then there's almost stress when you have to do it, because then you're robbing the nest egg. Then there's stress when you don't do it, because then you're like saying, okay, look, I did this, my day was easy. And have you ever like been driving and someone needs to get out, and then you're like, and you just don't feel like doing it, and then you don't let them out, and then afterwards you're like, oh man, I should have let that guy.
Especially if you look in the mirror and there's like 50 cars behind you, and you know nobody else is gonna.
Like I did this on the way here. There was a truck that needed to get out, and I didn't let him out, and it's like I felt guilty, right? Well, imagine if you had everything that money could desire. Imagine how many things like that are going to happen in your life.
Yeah.
The homeless person needs to get to the methadone clinic to get a job, but you didn't help them do it. The person has needs a blanket, but you were going to the store, you didn't get them a blanket. You see the old lady paying for her groceries. Should I have bought those groceries? Would that have been, it just goes on and on. So basically there's all kinds of reasons. So like if you have everything that you could possibly need, you have a responsibility to people, especially people of the household of faith, but to people that you care about or people that you see, to help them. And then also achieving that degree of success can create stress. Losing it can create stress. So this is why the gospel, this is one of the reasons I believe the gospel is a gospel to the poor. Another thing that we talked about, we go from middle class to upper middle class. I don't know if it's just natural selfishness, but like we said, when you're middle class, you get an extra 40 grand, you say, I'm going to buy a new car. Then you start to get rich and you're like, well, wait a second. Should I be investing this in retirement? It's almost like you feel poorer when you get to the low level of rich than and if you get too caught up in that thinking, then you end up not helping anybody. And you can't just turn it on and off like a switch. So you decide not to help anybody, that doesn't change the fact that they need help.
Right.
You ignore that, you're getting anxiety.
Yeah.
Okay. So another new cultural moray, a cultural norm, is, does discriminating against older people give you peace? Because they're so darn creepy. Who wants them around? Right?
Bunch of raisins.
Yes. Well, I've been trying to do a campaign to make people more knowledgeable about raisins. We call it raising awareness.
Yeah. You get out there gone.
I think I butchered that, but you still get the punchline. Okay, so question number 4, Lily. Does discriminating against older people give you peace?
No, there's no type of discrimination that creates peace.
I'm trying to think about that. Like, is there a positive way to discriminate against something? I can't think of anything right now. But, okay, yeah, no, that's a good point. That's a good point. Ben?
Yeah, discriminating against anyone creates anxiety, but older people also have a lot of experiences, wisdom, and resources that can help you manage regular situations and stress you might have. So if you discriminate against them, you lose all those benefits.
Yep, you lose the value of the people, right? Okay, and Richard?
Yeah, similar to him. I said, older people have a lot to offer in terms of wisdom, experience, and guidance. And I also want to include, like, in the wisdom, like, there's a certain type of peace that just, like, knowing, like, as you get older, you learn how to not to overreact to things. Like, everything's not an emergency. You have a calmness that, is helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So, but if you paint everybody older, say, with the same bad brush, then just the fact that you're wrong is going to give you anxiety, let alone that you're throwing away all of those virtuous features that could help you.
Well, I think there's been a lot of normal human behavior that has been destroyed in the last decade with this age discrimination.
Mm-hmm.
Is number one reason it don't create peace, the most obvious big elephant in the room, is that everybody's getting older.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so the first generation that started the age discrimination is millennials. Well, the irony is this year the oldest millennial is 44, so you start to get old at that. So the people that started the discrimination are
Now getting old.
Now getting old, right?
Yeah.
Number 2 is so therefore if you're making fun of someone for doing something that you're in the process of doing, there's got to be anxiety in that, I would think, right?
Yeah.
But then also too is that when you had society respecting the elders, that it isn't just the wisdom that you get. There's love that you get from respecting the elders. There's decorum that you get. There's character that you get. And then you had a sense of structure by respecting the elders.
Yep.
And then also too, the thing I've learned, because I've studied how people age, I see a big difference, right, from one person to the next. Like I forgot his name, but Paul Rudd. There was another one, is aged remarkably well, right? And there's many ladies that have aged well that are famous, like Cheryl Ladd's aged really well, Christy Brinkley's aged well. Like people don't always age the same, and I can't help but wonder if this negative thing where we got to put everybody in the same brush if they're old, if you take away some of the desire to be healthy to people, and I almost think the age discrimination hurts people because then they're convinced that when they get to be a certain age they can't do things. They say, oh, I'm old so I can't remember this. I'm old so I can't jump. I'm old so I can't blank, right? And then that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, because then you make people feel old, they become older, so then you can't learn from your elders, and then you're not loving your neighbor as yourself if you're discriminating against them, and then you're shrinking the people that you can talk to, you're shrinking opportunities, and you're making the society more isolated by saying that every older person is creepy, every older person is unattractive. We're now attributing every fable known to man to age. If somebody likes something popular, like a song that's 30 years old, they say, oh, that ages me, and that's considered bad because you're old. If somebody pulls a muscle, then they say, oh, that happened because you're old. If somebody is tired, oh, yeah, you're old, so you're not sleeping as good. If somebody makes any mistake. Oh yeah, that must have a senior moment, so you're making mistakes. So by doing this, we're making life less interesting. We're assuming everything in life is bad. Every person that's old is bad, and they're not worthy of fellowship, comfort, or any love. And then as a result of that, you create a big isolation. You don't benefit from their wisdom. You don't learn what life was like from them. And you don't have an authority structure in society that creates stability.
Yep.
And so, once again, that creates anxiety. So, if you got to think everyone that's old is bad, if you're young, that creates anxiety because you then think all these creepy people around me are making my life bad. If you're old, that creates anxiety because you say, oh, I'm old, now I'm an outcast because I'm old. And if you, anything in between, if you think that when you get old, if you have an injury, you say, oh God, I'm getting old, so I'm never going to get healed. You know, like all of this age discrimination just creates a lot of anxiety for everybody, not just the people that are old. And okay, so now the last question of the evening is, now next week we have positive questions on this topic. This is the last negative question. Does political activism create peace? Explain.
It's one of those, like, how do you explain what light is? Kind of is.
Oh,
on
let me
peace.
clarify why people, what they're thinking, that are politically active. They
Yeah.
think that their side is the only side, and that if they don't get their way, there's going to be problem, and when there's problems, there's going to
Right.
be chaos.
Yeah.
So my hint is, I guarantee you, every political activist thinks they're creating peace. The question is, are they right? Okay, Benjamin, does political activism create peace? Explain.
No, it typically incites anger, and also if you are the activist, it creates a lot of anxiety focusing on all the problems.
Yep, that's true. Simple, to the point. Lily?
I said, not most of it. Most of the time it doesn't. Most of the time it's based in anger and for the purpose of making other people angry.
Yep, and even when it's not, it still has a way of creating anxiety. But Richard?
Politics today is based on what's wrong with the opposing platform, why they are stupid, why every problem is their fault. The barrage of negative claims, feelings, and hatred, which is not very peaceful.
Right. Well, I think the biggest problem with political activism in our country, I don't know what it's like in other countries where you have more political parties, but in our country you have two political parties, and so basically, if you're an activist on the right, then you actually think that the left, especially the activists on the left, you think they're demons, that they're evil, and that their plan is going to destroy every fabric and every person in society. And if you're on the left, you think this is true on the right. And the problem is that people are people on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
There's a degree of truth to it, like where the right is wrong. There's a degree that there's some stuff that they're doing that actually is destroying society, and like with the left, some of their social extreme values that are abominations are actually destroying the family and destroying relationships, and so you can have some truth to it, but there's also other truths that political activists don't realize, is that there's good intentions in both sides.
Right.
You know, there's like sometimes somebody doing something that you're totally opposed to. Like I use the example of Planned Parenthood, right? Now, as a Christian, I'm not in favor of Planned Parenthood. I think that it promotes abortion and it promotes things that I'm against, so I'm against it, right? Okay, but now that doesn't mean that I think everybody that does it is evil. I think they have a different viewpoint of life, and they're
Right.
trying to do good. So
Right.
therefore, if you can get over political activism, you could say, I'm against Planned Parenthood, but you don't have to hate the people that are doing it. Or if you're into Planned Parenthood, you could recognize that some of the people that are against it are actually trying to save lives. You know, so you can try to like look for the good in each other and try to find, you know, some common ground. And so it's I've always thought that most of the people are good, and people have completely different opinions than me. Most of them are good too. Okay. Now, of course, if I have my opinion and you have your opinion that's different, this could be something I think would be self-destructive, but that doesn't mean that you're all bad. So the problem with political activism is we're saying everybody that's different is bad and dangerous, and that if we don't get our way, then society's going to be destroyed. So this started with Obama, and he did some executive orders, and then he got elected based on political activism because everybody wanted a black president. And unbeknownst to any of them, his degree of wokeism, his degree of incompetence got massively exaggerated when we got Trump into power. And so then people, you can see then that this is causing our whole democracy to get destroyed, because then everybody that supports Trump thinks that if we don't let him have his way, that this whole country's going to get destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
So then if each time we get someone in power, we think the other person's going to destroy the country, then we actually are destroying the country.
Mm-hmm.
What made the country great was having the balance of power. And the beauty of it is by recognizing the good in each other. If you put enough of us together, then most of the time what's best ends up being the results.
Yeah.
So when you get politically active, you think that the country's being destroyed, you think that the opposing people are dangerous, and you think that everything that you live for is gone. That creates a lot of anxiety. So if you have to think that everybody that has a different political view than you is bad, this destroys you more than you know. There's nothing wrong with having your own opinion if you have it in good intentions, but you shouldn't actually believe that because you have an opinion, that someone's different opinion makes them the worst form of scum that ever lived on the earth. And then thinking that bad thought, then you see people have different views, and you say, okay, they're bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you think they're bad. If they're bad, then that means they're dangerous. Then if they're dangerous, that means you're in danger. Then if you're in danger, then your environment is dangerous. This is a lot of anxiety. Or if
Right.
you recognize that man was made in the image of God and some of these people that are different are good, then you're not anywhere near as stressed out.
Hmm.
God forbid that you might actually learn from someone. That's why I like to use the gun control issue, because I think both sides are correct. Okay, you ban guns in New York, you're just giving more guns to the criminals. The conservatives believe this. This is true. The conservatives say give teachers guns, and that will save students. They did this in Israel. This is true, right? Now then, the liberals say we need to stop creating semi-automatic weapons for people to buy. This is true. The conservatives disagree with it, and it's I think it's undebatable, unquestionable that automatic weapons kill people, right?
A lot of people.
Right. So you would think that a liberal would be able to see that it benefits a teacher that is a licensed gun owner to have it to protect the students. And you would also think that the conservatives could eventually see that having semi-automatic weapons in your closet might actually not benefit society.
Yeah, and if you could see the good in the other person's view, then we could solve the problem.
If you actually knew, because some of the conservatives are
solve
good
it
because they're
now.
trying to protect their
There's an
family,
impasse.
and some of the liberals are good because they're saying they're trying to save society. If you actually could say, okay, this person here is trying to save society, this person here is trying to protect their family, then you would have more incentive.
Well, then you can come to a policy that we can all agree on. But if you think the opposite side is just wrong and stupid, we can't ever have, you're at an impasse.
Yeah, so there's some issues where one side is right, one side's wrong, and I think on gun control, both sides are right and both sides are wrong, and then, and everything in between. But the point is that labeling someone bad for having a different opinion creates a lot of anxiety. If the person actually is so bad that they're actually physically murdering people, then fine.
Right.
But if the person is just a normal person that has a different life, and once again, think of redemption. This is where redemption creates a lot of peace. If you get anxiety from someone you think has destructive opinions, then the biblical answer is to try to redeem them. It's not
Right.
to hate them.
Right.
And so political activism robs you of your peace. Discriminating against old people robs you of your peace. And let me go back to the other questions. This wokeism robs you of your peace, and isolation robs you of your peace, and obsession with wealth does too. So next week we go into the things that actually create it. So dear God, here I pray that we all seek peace and pursue it, and that you give us the abundance of peace, the peace that passeth all understanding. You fill it in our heart along with your love and joy. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.